PGIM India Mutual Fund recently came out with its Retirement Readiness Survey. One of the key findings of the survey was that as we Indians move up the affluence ladder, people are prioritizing happy goals such as the purchase of a house, a car, planning for their children's education and marriage, and so on. But they are not thinking and saving enough for a distant goal like retirement planning. One reason for this also is that retirement is seen as a sad phase in their lives and it has certain negative connotations. In an interview with Business Standard, Ajit Menon, Chief Executive Officer, PGIM India Mutual Fund, says that it is very important to get a trusted financial advisor who can handhold you through this journey. And it is also important to reframe the goal of retirement as a happy goal. Think of it as the goal of financial freedom. Watch this interview to learn more about the nitty-gritties of retirement planning and how you can get started on your own personal journey, even though the summit might seem distant and the goal may appear very daunting initially.
Good morning and welcome to our show.
Thank you, Sanjay. It's my pleasure to be here with you.
PGIM Mutual Fund has come out with an elaborate survey on retirement planning. It touches upon one of perhaps the most significant issues within financial planning and also an extremely vexing ones. Not enough people are saving for retirement. If they are saving, they are not saving enough. And those who are doing this planning are not doing it the right way. So in today's interview, we will go in depth into the what and the why and the hows of this subject with you. My first question is, your report states that those who plan for their retirement started at around 33 years of age. Those who haven't done so intend to do so in their 50s. The question is, why is it important to plan for retirement in this day and age? And why is it important to start early?
Sure, Sanjay. I think that you raise a pertinent point. And in the survey, we saw that people who were a little bit more planned were starting earlier, but most people had a sense that they will start probably later in life as far as this goal is concerned. And to your question as to why is this so important, it is because amongst all the financial goals that a person has for his or her life, that usually includes their children first, their education, their marriage, their spouse's security, their lifestyle, their house. When you look at all of these financial goals, you realize that you can get a loan in case you fall short of some of these financial goals. However, retirement is the only financial goal for which you don't get a conventional loan. And that makes it the most important financial goal to be planned for much in advance. Of course, there are products like reverse mortgage, as people here in the Western world is there in India, but not a very mature product as yet. Therefore, the importance of prioritizing something for which you may not get a loan to fill any gap makes retirement the most critical goal to plan for. Apart from that, the second aspect, which is pointed to by global research, is longevity risk, or the risk of living longer. And I think we can say that in today's day and age, given the progress that medical science is making, that many of us, and especially the younger generation, will probably live for much longer than one usually plans for. And so it's therefore important that we have a good handle on making sure that we do not compromise on our lifestyle and our requirements later on in life and get maybe dependent on our family or children and things like that, which is a rising need anyway. I would say these are the two important aspects. A third, very close third, is the fact that ultimately, health is very critical as one also lives longer. And when it comes to expenses, especially into your retirement, one of the biggest aspects that can upset plans is when you have health issues for which a large part of what you have saved has to be used up. So one has to consider a couple of variables which are very important for this goal. And being planned a little in advance and knowing what to do is probably critical for Indians to know and understand as well.
One very insightful finding of your survey was that in India, retirement saving is correlated to income. It is not correlated to age. Could you elaborate on this aspect?
I would say, Sanjay, that I think that India is emerging out of many decades of a scarcity mindset. And when we look at per capita incomes in India, it is rising. The latest RBI report in 2022-23 says that per capita income is a little about $2,200 now. 10 years ago or 11 years ago, it was about $1,000. The reason I mention this is because when incomes are challenged and are not as enough, people tend to then use it up for the most important goals that they usually plan, which is to do with their children and their spouses and their lifestyles. As surpluses increase, we see people wanting to therefore deploy money towards specific goals of their life. And that's when retirement steps in. So if you looked at the RBI report on the tax filing, for instance, you realize that there is only 5% of Indians who have filed taxes on income about 30 lakhs, for instance. So a large part of India is really earning less than 30 lakhs. And if you were to look at a percentage, it would be 80% of people earning less than even 15 lakhs a year. So when we say it's a function of income, it means that for most people, therefore, in India, the focus is just to make sure that ends are met. And then if there is something to just protect their life with insurance or to save for their children. When those surpluses increase, your need for roti kapda makan is well met, and those surpluses now can be deployed towards more specific goals that you want for your holidays or for a second home, and especially for things like retirement that you start allocating for. So it's not a function of age, because those surpluses can happen for different age groups across time. And once an individual starts to have surpluses, people get more organized as far as their financial goals are concerned and start allocating money for specific goals like retirement, as we are speaking.
But that can sometimes also mean that you leave it till too late.
It is possible that you could leave it till too late, because the general tendency is that when we were interviewing the people for this survey, we looked at the qualitative survey, especially in 2020, people were saying that, my children are my reverse mortgage. So while we don't have the reverse mortgage product in India, they say, hey, I'm investing all of my money to make sure that my children are well settled and do well so that they can take care of me during my old age. So that's been a tendency for how people tend to, plan for. But you're absolutely right that, when we think about important goals like retirement, it might end up, therefore, for us to leave things for a little longer than is necessary. And I think, therefore, the awareness around the fact that, and we are seeing that rising awareness as well, especially for people in the metros and the mini metros, that more and more people don't want to be dependent on their children or their families. And I think that's a good trend to sort of notice. The second aspect is that when we looked at the 2023 survey, which is post the pandemic, one important insight that we saw was that when it comes to money and when it comes to savings and investment, for an individual, it is a sense of fulfilling a responsibility and obligation to family. But post the pandemic, we are seeing a rise in a need to express self-identity, in a sense that after the pandemic, I guess a lot more people are thinking about that life is short. Any unexpected thing can happen. So what's in it for me? While I take care of my family, I should take care of myself as well and my aspirations as well. And so we are seeing that trend where people are investing into education loans for reskilling themselves or adding a skill, which is a good trend. I hope that those trend holds into the future as well. But I do say that I do sense that there is a rising awareness definitely amongst Indians post the pandemic that some of these longer term goals and the need to think about financial security and stability is rising. We definitely saw changes in behavior, changes in attitudes towards longer term goals and savings, which is a good trend for us to see. And we hope that those trends hold.
Now, according to the survey, 59% of household income goes into taking care of current expenses. Now,
Correct.
what happens to the balance 41%? Why doesn't some part of it get allocated to retirement savings?
So a couple of aspects there. So out of the 41%, about 11% is for insurance, and the balance 30% was savings and investments, where the predominant form of savings and investments were fixed deposits or annuities, or then gold, and then postal schemes. So much of India still depends on some of these guaranteed return products and safe and conservative products, and also includes things like gold, which could be a very near-term phenomena, as well as gold's been doing well. And it's a pretty favored asset for Indians in general. So of this 30% in savings and investments, if one were to ask, why is not some portion of that being kept for retirement, I would say that the savings and investments are, ultimately getting used for the most happy outcomes that people want to really plan for, and the priorities that they do for their children and their spouse and their lifestyle. Retirement as a goal, Sanjay, in our survey seemed like a negative goal for a lot of people. There is some negativity associated to the word retirement itself, I would presume, because people have a picture that they conjure up in their mind when they talk about retirement, about being old or having some health issues and things like that, that they may have seen around in their families or their neighborhood. So it is a bit of a negative goal, and people don't like to plan for negative goals. So one important aspect here, Sanjay, to your question as to why people don't probably put money aside, is a little psychological. It is required for people to reframe retirement as a happy goal for them to start doing something. Think about it. It's children's education, it's children's marriage, it's about a house, it's about experiences in a holiday, it's about a car. These are happy goals for people that they aspire for. Retirement, thinking about having nothing to do, much of a purpose, taking care of maybe grandchildren or just staying at home, is not seen as a very positive goal. At PGIM India, one of the things that we suggest and recommend to investors as well as to advisors is to reframe this topic of retirement to mean something happier. And we feel that if we used the word financial freedom instead of retirement, it might be a beginning for people to start thinking positively. Who doesn't need financial freedom? Whether you're young or old, you need financial freedom. Most people say, for instance, that they may not stop working, unlike the conventional thinking about retirement, that you hang up your boots at 60 and then you're doing nothing. Most people, especially the younger generation, say that they will work for as long as they can. But what's more important is the psychological aspect of framing it in a happy manner. And we think that if people start reframing it, if all stakeholders in this ecosystem start reframing retirement as financial freedom, you might probably be able to nudge people much better towards putting away something for that financial freedom throughout their life.
So the ideal should be to achieve a state of finances where you have to work if you have to, if you want to, whenever you want to. So that kind of freedom is what people should aspire for. Even though the younger generation says they will continue to work after 60, but that should be work out of choice, not compulsion.
My view on this, Sanjay, is slightly different. Globally, what research points to is that if you are mentally active, you have a better probability and a better chance of being physically fit as well. And especially if you are not engaged mentally from a purposeful manner. And purpose could mean that you're not earning and you're simply volunteering to do charity work. It can mean that. At the same time, purpose can also mean that you are not engaged in your primary profession, but in things that you love and enjoy in your life. It could be your hobbies and your interests that you are now monetizing on. You could be teaching in a college or a school. You could be a yoga instructor, or you could be doing things that you enjoy in your life, which also brings in some money. It may not necessarily be what you earned out of your primary income. But I think the most important point for people to take away is that if you are going to live longer, which is possible in today's world, then it's very important to take care of your mental health, which has a big impact on your physical health. And research on mental health seems to suggest that being purposeful is important for you. And therefore, however which way you define that purpose is important. So I wouldn't probably say that you have to make it black and white to say that I have enough money so that if I want to, I need not work at all. I think the purpose of working is very different. It's not about the money, but it's about your health, your mental health and your physical health, so that even if you're living longer, you're not beset by medical issues and problems which can potentially happen, especially if you're doing nothing. And that's the latest research. And I think that sometimes we have to follow the science of these things to just keep in mind strategies that one can adopt for having a very meaningful sort of second innings, so to speak.
Very true. Very true. Now, could you elaborate on how the all pervasive loan culture that has come in is affecting our ability to save for important goals like retirement?
My perspective on this is that yes, you're absolutely right that there's an pervasive loan culture. Is it only for the young and not for the older generations? Probably no. It could maybe on balance be more for the young, as they're more digitally savvy and they find more opportunities to click and buy and to click onto EMIs and things like that. But one interesting aspect of our 2023 survey on retirement readiness was that there is an attitudinal shift amongst people to be very conscious about large ticket purchases. They are conscious about financial stability as well, which is a good trend. And I do think that one should be trying to follow certain thumb rules, so that even though they may be taking loans to fulfill certain aspirations of their life, they are well within a discipline so that they don't disturb their finances. And typically a thumb rule would say that out of the 100 rupees that you have as a take home, you should limit your loans to not more than 30 rupees. And make sure that you save at least 20 rupees in the initial phases of your earning life, which basically means that after 30 rupees for EMIs and 20 rupees for your saving, you're left with 50 rupees, which should ideally be where you limit your needs and wants, your entire expenses, so to speak. So it's a basic thumb rule, because I do think that a strategy that people should think about is that as they get into their 30s and their 40s, they should increase that savings amount of 20% to a 30% and a 40%. So you can literally take your age band as a thumb rule to say, if you're working in your 20s, try and save 20%. If you're working in your 30s, try and save 30%. If you're working in your 40s, try and save 40. And when you get into your 50s, hopefully most of the obligations related to your children's education or buying a house is over, and you should try and save more into your retirement kitty. So it's a simple thumb rule that people can follow. But I agree that more and more people want to express their lifestyle needs in India, and that's a function of per capita income rising. As I said, roti kapda makan is now a smaller proportion of your income, and the surpluses are allowing you to express your lifestyle requirements as well. What I would say is that one should not be so rigid so as not to enjoy life, as long as you have some back of the mind thumb rules to allow you to go through life with ample savings that you may also require, while at the same time using the loans to enjoy life as you should. So the only idea is not to go overboard on it. Now, my sense is at PGIM India, and when we look at the research and science around the subject, is to say that it's ultimately human behavior that upsets the outcomes that we require from our finances, so to speak, because it's fear and greed that drive much of our decisions. And if you can't manage the discipline of saving 20s in your 20s and 30% in your 30s and so on and so forth, the best strategy to follow is to have a trusted financial advisor to keep that discipline on your behalf and help you do the savings and investments in a more process oriented and a more conservative, whichever way that your risk appetites are. You can make sure that you have somebody to guide you through that. And I would definitely recommend that to family and friends as well, because I myself follow it, to make sure that you have somebody as an advisor, a trusted advisor, because there are all of your behavior biases that may creep in when you try to do things on your own, and having a trusted person to help you through it can be extremely valuable for your long-term financial goals.
Now we'll get into the nitty-gritties of how to go about and retirement saving and what exactly to do. Ideally, how much savings should you have in your retirement kitty? Say if you retire at 60, what is the ideal sum to have as a multiple of your annual expense?
Well, most literature around this subject will say that you will need about 25 to 30 times your annual expenses as a corpus. And a person can go online and figure out so many retirement calculators that are available, where you can put in your numbers and make the calculator, give you the outputs of what kind of inflation do you expect, and so how will your expenses likely be at the end of around 55 or 60, and therefore what will be the multiple that you will require as a corpus. My second important point related to this, Sanjay, is that a lot of people, when they do that calculation and when they come up with the number, they look at it and they think that it is completely out of their reach, and they simply abandon the journey to try and put that corpus together, thereby increasing the sort of anxiety related to your longer term retirement and other financial goals. So how can one get around this aspect? So while you may use a calculator and suddenly find that your number is like a 3 crore or a 5 crore or more, and you feel that this is completely out of reach, I think it's important to realize that the effect of investing as early as you can, investing in a diversified portfolio, using a professional to guide you in terms of what are the strategies that you can do to make sure that your investments can last much longer, or that you reach the corpus that you require. I think those are the strategies that people can employ to make sure that they are not derailed from that journey that they are taking. Number two is that, and I don't think this is as much related to the corpus, that question that you had. But number two, I think, is also that just like we have experts recommend that one should have an emergency fund always, even if you're young in life, you should have at least 3 to 6 months of your monthly expenses kept aside in a fixed deposit or in a safe product, so that if there is any unexpected thing that happens, a job loss or a medical event or some such pandemic kind of event, you can make sure that you don't disturb your core investments, and you can start withdrawing from your emergency fund, because we have seen that large market dislocations as well sometimes take about 6 to 9 months to come back to normal as the world sort of brings out solutions for it, just as we saw during the pandemic in 2020. Similarly, I feel that even when one is planning for retirement, one should be thinking about a retirement emergency corpus. And the reason for it is that the two issues that happen is, one, anxiety around, will I be able to get to that corpus? Two is that if I do get to the corpus, will it really be enough for all of my requirements all through my life? So for the first one, which is, will I have the corpus, which is 25 to 30 times of my annual expenses at 60? my solution to people would be to first definitely have a trusted professional guide you on those numbers, because there are some few variables and adjustments that one can make to it, and the kind of investment options that one may need to choose from their own individual and unique household requirement and risk appetite. So that becomes a good strategy, to have somebody guide you for it. Two is obviously to start early from a discipline point of view. And the second aspect is that if one were anxious about whether the corpus will really last me for the time period I want, this retirement emergency fund, which could be a 6 months to 1 year of your annual expenses kept aside in a separate safe investment, which is untouched, can be used when there is suddenly a market dislocation or a big requirement or a medical emergency that comes up, so that your core investments are not disturbed. So in essence, I think there are very simple rules to follow and strategies and tactics to adopt, which can make your journey for your longer term investments much smoother and reduce your financial anxiety around those aspects.
Another very significant finding of the survey was that only 1 in 5 Indians factor in inflation when planning for retirement. Could you dwell on the impact that inflation can have on our savings, how it corrodes it?
Definitely, Sanjay. I think that one way to look at this aspect for the subject of retirement is to realize that one of the highest inflation that happens is in your health expenses. And especially as you get into your later years in life, you've got to be prepared well enough to make sure that your journey is not upset because of a health emergency or the expenses that come related to your health as such. So the one thing is well known is that inflation is nothing but something that impacts your purchasing power, which means that today most individuals are conscious about the lifestyle they want to lead. And many people end up compromising their lifestyle into retirement simply because they want to make their corpuses last as much as possible, and they're worried about the various things that might hit them into the future. So inflation clearly is something that impacts your purchasing power, and it keeps having the money that you feel you would want over periods of time. So you need to keep running to make sure that you have surpluses available. A simple way to understand this, Sanjay, according to me, is that when you are thinking about more financial stability into your longer term financial goals like retirement, one must be aware of real returns. And the fact is that if inflation is, for example, 5%, and if you are earning, let's say, 8 to 9% on your investments with a mix of equity, fixed income, and hopefully a professional is helping you with it, then that 9% returns minus the 5% inflation, 4% is the real return that you're earning. And ideally, the withdrawal from your retirement corpus should not be more than the real return that you're earning. So I'll just repeat that. Whatever is your returns minus inflation is your real return. And the real return should ideally be the withdrawal rate from your retirement corpus. If the withdrawal rate goes higher than that real return, you are dipping into the principal of the corpus, and therefore you can deplete your principal faster. So if you were to say it in another way, the impact of inflation is that you may be withdrawing 4 or 5% from your corpus over periods of time. And suddenly, if you have inflation rising in the economy and it goes to 6 or 7%, then what's happening is that you are withdrawing from your principal. So I think that's the impact to be conscious about. And having a trusted advisor therefore helps you in that process of saying that you have well-planned investments. A retirement emergency fund can be useful during times of dislocation or of temporary high inflation as well. And personally, I think that India is on a great path where the central bank has CPI as a target of 4% plus minus 2. This started off in 2014-15 under Raghuram Rajan, Arun Jaitley, and so on and so forth, which I think today we are one among probably 55 countries in the world which has a policy for inflation targeting. It's a good thing for Indians because you have a central bank which is very focused on making sure that CPI is controlled within a range. However, you do have the individual responsibility to also think that at a household level, what is your inflation, and therefore how should you be planned around it? Since this is an important variable, and we have seen that in surveys done even globally by PGIM across advisors, they say that inflation risk is the first risk, and then comes risk of living longer or other market risks and things like that. So I would say that that is how one can go about thinking about real return as a withdrawal rate, and making sure that you have a discipline around that.
Now, since PGIM is a mutual fund, what role can mutual funds play both during the accumulation and the withdrawal phase of retirement?
Yes, Sanjay. I think mutual funds as a category, as everybody knows, has multiple options and solutions that people can use both from an accumulation phase and a decumulation phase or withdrawal phase. And it has products across the risk spectrum that may suit the risk appetite of people. Our recommendation, which is a general recommendation as usual, is for younger people to think about diversified equity funds like the flexi cap category or the multi cap category for saving when you're young towards your retirement goals, so that these are equity products that can compound. Since your time frames are longer, 15 to 20 years and above, then these kind of diversified equity funds can be a very good product for you to keep investing for your long-term goals. And once you reach a stage where you want to withdraw your corpuses, typically it is better to shift those monies into other categories within the mutual fund sphere, like for instance, the conservative hybrid category, which has an upper cap of 25% in equity and the balance is in fixed income. And you have other products as well. There's an equity savings category. There are also balanced funds like balanced advantage categories for a little bit more people who might be moderate to aggressive to think about withdrawing from a product that automatically resets itself based on the market levels and things like that. So I do think that there are these very good strategies. If you're in your young phase and you're accumulating, it's always better, and you have a 15 to 20 year and above time frames, it's better to use flexi caps and multi caps as products to save for your retirement. And if you're a very conservative person and you have various different financial requirements at home, then balanced advantage funds can work for you there as well. And post your retirement, when you're looking at withdrawals, look for categories like the hybrid, conservative, or balanced funds into which you can deploy. At PGIM, we ask people to think about using that 25 to 30 times of expenses as a corpus to be divided into 3 different buckets. The first bucket, which you withdraw for the first 10 years, to be a hybrid conservative bucket. The second bucket for the next 10 years to be in a balanced fund or a balanced advantage. And the third bucket, which is in your last 10 years of the 30 years, to be in a flexi cap kind of product. The reason is, by the time you're withdrawing from the first bucket and your second bucket, your third bucket has got 15 to 20 years to compound, and therefore you'll have the probability of not running out of your money. Most people get too conservative, but I think here is where good help and good professional help can come, and these kind of strategies can be adopted as well.
I've come to my last question. Some final words of advice and wisdom on retirement planning. Say something out of what you practice.
Well, Sanjay, I have been using a financial advisor for the last 13 or 14 years of my life, and I have only gained and had the benefit of my own thoughts around this to say that it is always good to have a trusted professional to guide you through the process. So I follow a more planned approach where goals for my children's education and our retirement are all planned for and allocated for in different mutual fund product strategies. I don't invest in direct stocks at all. I have all of my money in mutual funds. And what I have done is to only make sure that the advisor who is advising me has good processes to make sure that risk is taken care of, downside risk is taken care of. So once I question them on knowing what are the processes that they follow, that helps me for my financial goals. So I think that how I follow is going through this. But at the same time, my advice is, apart from the advantage of having a financial advisor, as an individual, I think when you're thinking about retirement as a subject, I do think that the first thing to do is to reframe retirement as a happy outcome for yourself, and therefore think about it as financial freedom. The second most important thing is to do something very deliberate about your health. And I think that that has big impact on the cost of medical expenses later and things like that. And when you're thinking about health, the third aspect which is connected to it is to think about your hobbies and your interests, which can be monetized, a secondary skill, a source of secondary income that you can have. The big positive of doing that is to make sure that you are purposeful and you're taking care of your mental health, which has a big impact on your physical health. And therefore, you can enjoy that second innings as far as possible. So I have my own things that I'm working on past my career in terms of what I would like to do. And I'm already working around those goals as well. So I would say getting a financial advisor, making sure that you have reframed retirement as a happy goal and thinking about what you want to visualize as being productive all through your life, and therefore thinking about secondary skills that you can adopt and evolve, even if it may be volunteering or it's working on your hobbies and interests, are the three things which I would say would be the main takeaways for this topic of ours.
Thank you, Mr. Menon. We have had a very wide-ranging discussion, and I'm sure our viewers will gain immensely from it. Thank you. It has been a pleasure speaking to you.
Thank you, Sanjay. That's been a great pleasure for me to be on this show of yours. Thank you.
Goodbye. Goodbye. Have a nice day.
Thank you.